started. Okay. So, I guess full disclaimer, this is, and I said this in some of the announcements, this is brand new curriculum for me this term as well. Now, I've already gone through lots of it. I've already read most of the new book. So I'm pretty familiar, but just as disclaimer, if you come across any weird issues with quizzes, and some of you already have and messaged me about it, just let me know because we would love to get those fixed for you. And it also benefits everyone in future terms as well. So if you run across anything, feel free to let us know, anything like that. But anyways, what we're going to do in these weekly meetings is kind of just cover like some of the topics for the week. And so in this case, where it's week 1, I'm going to install MySQL. We're going to walk through it. This is actually my first time installing MySQL on Windows myself. I usually use Linux. So that's this is my first time going through as well on Windows. If you're on Mac or Linux, you can follow the instructions. If you run in any snags, shoot me a message. If it's something that's pretty big, I can always create a video for those other operating systems. But they should be pretty similar or easier. Like on Linux, it's way easier than Windows. So I kind of went with Windows because most people will probably be on Windows, and it's probably the most challenging. So that's what we're going to do is we're going to get that started. And then I kind of wanted to point this out too, since we're here. Let me go to modules in week 1, our paper. So, and I kind of explained this in an announcement as well, but I kind of wanted to just reemphasize the paper is kind of replacing the labs each week, because we used to do a lot of labs, and the paper is essentially the lab. Now, what I like about this, and in fact, my graduate program was very much designed this way, where instead of like having a lab with tasks, it kind of gives you a paper and it lets you do the lab yourself. So it's I like to call it off the rails because you get to kind of choose how you want to do it. Now, there's some pros and cons. The pros is that you get to explore and experiment and research in your own way. And I truly believe that this way will you'll learn more because it'll be at your own kind of choosing. You'll kind of go your own route. But the downside is that it's also not guided 100%. And so I think once you, and so in this meeting, I'm hoping to kind of show you a little bit about how I would go about it. And then that way, you know, maybe after a couple weeks, you'll feel very confident in just diving in and doing it. So that's what we're going to do. So the first thing I would do before I actually start the lab, which essentially is what we're going to be doing in this meeting, is take a look at the paper. So in this case, what our case study here is that we want to, it kind of gives a little background. But the main thing is we want to understand the differences between some relational databases, and it kind of gives you some hints to kind of look at. And we're going to install MySQL database on our desktop, create a database, and populate the model, which is what goes along with the reading. So, so it should be pretty straight up there. But the main piece here is we should report with a paper that explains why using the command line or the command line shell, which we're going to show what that is, presents advantages that translate to productivity and the difference between an IDE and a command line interface. And up here, you'll notice that it says, he says, your manager has explained to you that your ability to work with and solve problems at the command line will directly correlate to your future contributions to the company. And just to, I guess, translate this is what they're trying to say is that if you can use the command line pretty well, you're more likely to be more competent, which is actually, from my experience, pretty true. Now, I use an IDE as much as I use the command line, which I think is both very viable tools. And I think in your paper, what you might want to do is kind of flesh out those ideas. We'll go over both a little bit here, but I'll let you kind of come to your own conclusion, because that's what I'm excited for about these papers really is I'm really excited to actually get to see, because honestly, there is no right or wrong answer. The real right answer is that you support your claim. So So, you know, like I said, I like to look at the paper first, because I would actually recommend, as you're going through doing these things that are in the preparation and reading section, you might want to take some screenshots. You might want to jot down some notes for your paper. You might want to save some code snippets, you know, whatever is going to support your cause. Because what I'm hoping for is that you don't just submit a paper, but I really want to see some supporting evidence in there, because that's where kind of the meat is, and you're to support it. And it kind of shows that you did the lab, essentially. So it kind of is twofold. So let's dive in. And just so you know, I am pulling all these instructions from, it will be from the week 1 preparation and reading. And hopefully, if you haven't done this yet, that's fine, because we're going to talk a lot about kind of what is SQL along the way, right after we get installed. And but the big portion here is this install MySQL, getting started. We're going to start right here with install MySQL, and it will take you to this page. And if you're not on the Teams, this has already come up once, so I'm going to click download here. And you don't actually have to sign up and log in. There's this little hidden link like they usually do. And you can just say, no, thanks, just start my download, which is what we're going to do. And while that's going, since we got about 30 seconds, let's talk a little bit about databases. So when I first started with databases, I had no idea what, I mean, I knew what they were, right? I knew that they stored data, but I had no idea how they worked or even how to conceptualize them. And so if I had to give a really dumbed down version, they're just like your Excel spreadsheets. The only difference is that instead of having like one table or one spreadsheet, you have an unlimited number of tables. And the big key, and this goes back to our paper because it talks about relational database versus a non-relational database, is that we can connect those tables together. And we'll talk a lot about that later on, but just for the sake of understanding, is basically imagine Excel spreadsheets that you can connect together. And you know, I think we've all kind of come across wanting to do that, you know, where, you know, we make a spreadsheet and we wish like, oh, I wish, you know, I could take this table and connect it to this one. And it kind of can do a little bit of that, but databases take it to a whole nother level. All right, so let's go through the setup. So we're gonna do the developer default is what we're gonna do. And you know what? I'm actually just going to. I don't know if I can. Oh, we can check them right here. So let's. MySQL is for Visual Studio. Sure. Okay, let's just hit next. These products are missing. Like I said, this is why it's really hard. Following. Okay, let's go back. I'm going to try a different one. Let's try full. See what that does. You can attempt. Let's MySQL for Visual Studio. This is why I really. There it is. This is why I prefer Linux personally, because with Linux, it's a one command install and you're done. But we'll do this because I know a lot of people are on Windows, so I should have tried this beforehand. Like I said, you're getting the from scratch version, which I guess is good. So we're going to install Visual Studio first. So let's do community because we are free. There it is. All right.
CIT225-Winter2021-Week, they actually have already created like a video where they walk you through step by step on how to download this.
Oh, really?
I don't know if they can share their video with you so you can load it up for this one, but
yeah, that would be.
They have it for both Mac and for IBM.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'll find that because sometimes it's nice just to have like a little bite-sized one. This will actually go pretty quick, I think. So, okay, let's do Python. We want that. And do they have a MySQL one here for us? No, we'll just find it later.
I did the install yesterday, and I didn't have to do the Visual Studio thing. And it's working.
If you already have it, let me see if, and maybe I just picked the wrong one. Let's see, because this one required that one. If we
I
do
think I
this,
did the developer default.
okay. Huh. And do you have, maybe you have Visual Studio already?
I have VS Code. And I did do the Python install, but it still gave me that error thing. But I was still able to go through with the MySQL installation.
Gotcha.
Because I did this too. Like about a year ago, I tried to take this course and ended up dropping it. And so I had installed it on a different computer because I've got a new one now. So I had to do the install all over again anyway. But it's working for me.
Okay. Let's add it to path. Well, that shouldn't take too long, I don't think. So hopefully. Let's do that too. Okay. There we go. We're moving along, I think. I'm going to do the developer default again. Let me make sure. Let's see. Does this one? Okay, this one installs MySQL Workbench. So does this one. Let's just do the developer default. And there we go. We're off to the races, except for that one's still going, but looks like it's done enough. So we will just let it go. And I guess while we're waiting, it's actually already coming up, so shouldn't take too long. Yeah, we'll give it just a second longer. Actually, I think this should work. Let's try. So let's start off. Just to start off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if this will actually load up. See if this goes. Yeah, I probably won't use you. Okay, so I don't know if that went. Maybe we have to wait for it to finish. I am not sure. But while we're waiting, what I will do is I will show you some command line. Now I'm going to connect to a MySQL instance that's already up and running. So yours you won't have to SSH, but if you you can always choose to do so if you want. But I'm just going to get to where we can actually log in to MySQL. Let's see. So it would be. And this is just a server that I have sitting here at my house. So there we go. All right, so I'm logging into a server. So this is where we will start. So MySQL. Now we say that I don't know if I remember my password. Well, we're going to try here. And maybe we'll get it. Oh, and this one's done. So we'll just do this. Okay, so development computer. I think we can leave this all as normal just to make sure. I'm going to check our instructions here. I'm pretty sure we can just leave this all on normal. We go back to our tutorial here. It goes through it. Development machine, enable it. Yep, so I think we're good. So let's go ahead and hit next. And we're just going to say use a strong password encryption. It's obviously a good thing. And then I'm going to set my password here. I'm going to do school. Rocks. Exclamation mark. All right. Then we could add a user here. I'm going to skip that for now because I think we do that later. Standard. Sure. Let's execute. That should take not too long. And there we go. So now we have our stuff. So I'm going to just say finish. Next. MySQL let's see, connect to server. All right, so now we're going to type this in here. School rocks, connection succeeded, and let's execute. Finish. Yeah, let's start both of those. Let's finish, and here we go. Now we're getting into the fun stuff. Okay, so this is where we're really going to get started on what applies to the paper, because we actually have both of our windows up here. So over here, this is the command line, and you can get to that if you search for MySQL on Windows. It will be MySQL shell. If you're on a Mac, I believe you'll open up the terminal and you can just type MySQL and connect that way. And then over here we have Workbench, and Workbench is our IDE, and that stands for an Integrated Development Environment. And we're going to talk a lot about the differences between the two, and what's the benefit and cons. But let's finish out the instructions first before I get too carried away, because what we want to do is we want to finish creating our user. And I'm going to do this actually all through the command line, so you can kind of see it that way. So the first thing we need to do is provision the student user and grant all privileges to the Sakila database. So we're just gonna, the nice thing is you can just kind of copy these for right now, but I'll explain what they do. So the first one is permissions. And basically what we're doing is we're saying, hey, give root user access to everything on this computer. What did I do here? Unexpected identifier.
I got that same exact error.
I did too.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I've never actually seen that one before. To root.
I actually had to go into MySQL Workbench and set it up. For some reason, if I clicked on the local instance that I already had set up, I could do a start command line in there, but I could not get it to work in my regular terminal. And I'm on a Mac, so I didn't know if it was because of the Mac or not.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I've actually never seen that before. I'm going to try it without the, oh, nope, there's just something it doesn't like. Yeah, that's weird.
Well, it is a new version of MySQL too.
Yeah, let me try, let me see if we can connect. Well, Well, I was hoping that would work. I'm going to try it real quick just to do it from command line. Because I think we should be able to just type in MySQL. Oh, no, apparently not. We could probably find the actual path. But I think we can do it from here as well.
That's where I did it.
I apologize for this because, like I said, this is my first time on Windows, and I never have. There's a way to new scripting shell.
Well, I actually did a right click on local instance, and then I went to start command line client, and that pulled up. Yeah, it's further down, like 1, 2, 3. Start command line client.
All right there. Okay, cool. That might be the best way to go then. Yeah, that looks way better. This is more like what I'm used to seeing on Linux. Okay, so that's good to know. So if you need to, right click this and go to start command line client. Okay, now we can get somewhere. So thank you. That's great to know. Grant all on. So we're basically saying grant all permissions on everything. So any database, any table to root. And our root user is the big one. So you definitely would want to keep root very secure because it can if you lose your root access, it's not going to be very good. To root at grant all. Oh, I missed on. There we go. Sometimes I can't talk and type at the same time. To root at localhost. And the way this works is root is our user and localhost is our host. So in this case, our local computer. And now let's create our user. Create user, student user. Because most of the time you don't want to use root to actually connect because it's just a security risk. Usually root is just used in emergencies. All right, so now we have our user created, and now we want to give that student user access only to our certain database. Grant all on, and I think I forgot to do the sakila database. Let's see if we can give it before. There we go. Okay, so now we are all connected. Oh, and it looks like we need to grant all. I think we already did that though. Pretty sure we just did that. Grant all on. Yeah, those are identical. So we're just going to end there. So anyways, let's create our database. So when we create a database, we use the sakila. We're going to use the sakila one, which is part of this tutorial, I guess you could say. And we're documenting the sakila database right here. All right, so this is the database that they're going to kind of use as our, I guess you could say, practice database. And it's kind of just like got some film stuff in there, but every one of these little icons is a table, and all these little lines connecting them, that's how they're connected. So you kind of get to map out your stuff, which we'll work on later. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. But we're going to build that database. So let's see, where is that file at? I downloaded it on my other computer. Does anyone know which link had the create the sakila database portion in it?
Mine came with it already in there.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking. So let's show databases. And there it is, just like you said. Perfect. So we can use the show database. If you ever are looking for something, you can always use the show command. So now that I see my database there, sakila, let's do use sakila. and we changed our database. So now let's see what's inside that database. So I'm going to say show tables. And here we can see all of our tables just like what was in our little diagram here. So really the big thing that, because we can do the same thing. Let me show you let's go into here now. And our navigator, our instance, let's see. Scoot you over this way. We can actually generate a list of these tables right in here. So let's go to server database right there. So I'm going to go under here to database, and then I'm going to click this reverse engineer. And then we can actually run this. I'm going to put in my password. And we're going to use the Sakila database. And there we go. And there we go. So now we can actually, you can see how they generated that same diagram with this, because this is actually what's in our database. The only nice thing is here we can actually click on this and see stuff. So like if I want to see how, let's find a good one that kind of makes sense. So let's say we have a staff table, right? Because remember, each one of these is like a little Excel spreadsheet. And every, let's start with a staff member. Kind of take a look at that. So in our database, we have a staff member, and every staff member has an address. So we can see how those are connected here. So if I go to address ID inside of staff, we can see the address ID there is connected to the address ID here. And so that's how those are connected, because this one, our staff has an address ID that will correspond with an address in this table. And that is a big chain reaction, because then if we actually go look, there's city and country that are part of an address that are connected to address. So we'll talk a lot about that in the future, but I kind of just want to give you an overview here. So let's go to file. I don't want this. Let's get rid of this diagram and our model. Let's don't save. There we go. So now that we're in here, I'm going to just show you some queries, which is how we get our information. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say use sakila. Let's execute that. And let's select everything from film. Let's just see what we get. So here we have some of our films and the data. We can kind of scroll through this. Now this is where we're going to start to see some differences. So let's go back over here to our command line. Get rid of that. Let's select everything from film. Now you can kind of see why a lot of times you'll choose to use an IDE, especially like I said, I use both. It depends on the task that you're accomplishing, because sometimes it's really nice to have this, like where we can scroll through here, we can copy data out of here with Control C. We can do different things. Where here it's we can copy, but basically it's just going to come out as plain text. So there's some of those differences. Now, the one thing that I will give for the command line is most of the time you're not actually working on a server that's on your local computer. And oftentimes you're working remotely. And so a lot of times you're doing administrative tasks. For example, like granting permissions and fixing actual like configurations, which in that case, the command line really comes in handy. But if I was getting ready to do my paper, you could take some screenshots of different things. You could write some notes. Like, because for example, I think the data view in the IDE is really handy. Really, really handy. And let's see, view. Let's see if we can add this panel, or maybe I just need to. I know somewhere there's a way to. Oh, there we go. Like I said, some of this is really, really different for me. So let's go to right here. So you kind of have two tabs here, and on this schema tab, we can actually browse. This is the other really nice thing about the GUI, is that we can come in here and we have this pane, and let's say we want to know, like, okay, what is the film table? And we can actually see all the columns in there and that kind of stuff. Now we can do the same thing here. It's just a little different. Sometimes it's nicer, sometimes it's not. Because for example, if I expand this, I can see the names, but the data types aren't right next to it. Now we can go in here and we can click the little gear button and we can see it, but so this is essentially the same info here. So we can see, like, the film ID is a small int. Is it a key? Yes, it's the primary key. Is it nullable? By default, it's not null. Auto increment, which is the AI, auto incremental, unsigned data type, not null, which means that it can't be empty, so on and so forth. So if I was writing the paper, I would just kind of experiment with some of this stuff, because you're going to come across tasks to do in the reading. In fact, we could pull up some of the tasks in the reading will kind of help guide you through some of this. But what I would really focus on is comparing the two of them and trying to understand the value between each. Because like I said, I do think that if you know how to use the command line, you're going to be more productive. But that doesn't mean you can't be productive on the GUI, or that you shouldn't use the GUI at all. So I think what the paper is really trying to tease out is what are the pros and cons to each, and what are your thoughts on it, and so on and so forth. Now, for the beginning, what I would say, especially right now, play with a little bit of both, because I think really what's important is you should know how to do both. Because I've actually come across people that they can look and see, because a lot of times it's about troubleshooting, to say, oh, why can't I insert this row of data into film? And then you have to open it up and see what's going on. And a lot of times they know how to do it here, but not here, which can be problematic, because sometimes here it's just quicker and easier. So you can toy around with. I'm trying to give some ideas here, some cues. But for beginners, this is really nice, because as you guys know, as being beginners, it's really nice to kind of see everything going on and kind of let you walk through it, because you don't have to memorize commands. Like, for example, if you want to see what's in film, if you're doing it on command line, you have to know to use the describe command, versus here you don't have to have that memorized. You can just click the button. But
is there somewhere that shows what the different command lines are that you would use? Because I've never used command before. So
yeah, and there's a lot of them. So I don't know if there's a definitive guide necessarily, because we'll actually end up using a lot of commands, because really it's just SQL. Because I say commands, but these are this actual MySQL syntax, and eventually we'll get into the more uniform, just plain SQL, to where I could actually, like, for example, I could create table. Let's create a table called test underscore table. Let's just create a real quick table here real quick. And I'm going to say name is a varchar 30. Let's just make it a nice quick table. Let's do name and age, and int. So I just created a quick table. And so that is also a command. So we're actually going to learn how to write SQL. So there's not a great, there are some cheat sheets out there, I'm sure, of some quick, easy ones, like for example, show and describe. But there's very few of those like utility ones. So we could actually, I could put together one for us here real quick, actually, if we wanted to. So here's what I would say are some MySQL utility commands. And I would say some of the most important one are show. And let's do some examples. Show databases. Shows databases. Pretty show tables. So those ones to me, like some of these commands are basic troubleshooting commands or exploratory, which I think are very important. So show is one of those first ones. If you want to show, you know, if we're going to start exploring, like when I first jumped in this database, one of the first things we did is show, because we got to know what we're looking at. We got to know what we have. So we use the show command. The next one, obviously, is...
Sorry, one more thing.
Yep.
At the end of that show databases, is there a certain either colon or parenthesis or semicolon? Is there something that's supposed to be in there specifically at the end?
Yes. So everything for the most part is ended with a semicolon.
Okay.
And I guess I should put that not on the explanation, but here. I guess that gets a little... There we go.
Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem. And I'm going to put these in backticks so that they make sense. All right, the next one is use, because the next kind of step is the use command. And let me put a description here. Use, go into, or use a specified database, because we can actually have multiple databases all on the same installation of our install here. So like I could actually, let's create one right now. I'm going to create database test DB1. So I just create another database. So I can say show to databases. And now I have this test DB1. So we can create multiple databases all on the same install. So whenever we start a new session, we want to kind of specify which database we want to use. Now, oftentimes you'll do this. So if I go home, I could actually add a new connection here. And let's call this CIT225 database. It's a local host, our username. So like if we want to connect with our student user instead of our root, we're going to put all this in here and say test connection here. It's going to ask us for our password, and our password for student was student. So we were successful. So I'm going to say okay. So if we want to make this connection, a lot of times you'll do that instead of having to choose use, which in this case is what we want to do. So a part of what we did was we set up our user, and it only has access to this sakila one. So if I go back to our root database here, we actually will see multiple databases. Now, right now you see sakila, sys, and world. If I refresh all, we'll actually see our new test DB here, because the root user has access to everything, where our student user only has access to sakila database. So if you set up your connection so that it connects directly to, or you only have access to one, then you don't have to use that use command. But if we're like in root, before we run any query, we have to specify it, because otherwise it doesn't know which database to use, if that makes sense. So that's the use command. And then the last one that's really handy, I guess we went over show tables. I think that's about it for now.
Something about describe or something?
Oh, right. That's what I was thinking. I was going to say, I thought I had one more. And the last one is describe, or DESC for short. I'm pretty sure in MySQL we can actually type describe. Yes, so I'm going to put describe here. So describe is how we view the definition of a table or object. Because really everything in SQL is an object, or it's a component. So we can describe multiple things, but most of the time we use describe to view a table and its definition, which is probably one of the most important things that we want to do, because we use it all the time. So let me let's describe film shows the table definition of the film table. There we go. So there's our cheat sheet, and I will share that with the video as well. So you don't need to copy that if you don't want to, because I will. In fact, let me just take this and let's just post it right in the chat right now.
You need the semicolon after the word film there too.
Very true. Thank you. Let me repaste that so you don't have the same error as me. There we go. All right, yeah, and so the describe command is how we're going to explore our actual table, because we can show tables and kind of see our list, but then we actually want to kind of see them. So a lot of times, and if you guys, once you graduate, if you go into a field where you are using databases, which anymore is getting to be more and more all the time, a lot of times you're thrown into an existing database. It would be extremely rare for you to jump into a position where you create the database from scratch. In fact, most times you're working with pre-made software. Someone's already built this. Like, so for example, your company might buy some software from somebody, and you're the database person that's going to be manipulating it, or adding to, customizing, or just maintaining. And so a lot of times you're going to be dealing with something that's already pre-made, similar to just like what we're seeing here in Sakila. We already have all this data. We already have all these tables. And so we need to explore it. So we've gone over the use to kind of switch to a database. We know how to show tables. And so the last step is we need to figure out what's in these tables. Now, the nice thing is we can kind of look at the table name and make an assumption. So for example, a country, we can assume holds countries, but we need to see how things connect and how they're there. So like, let's take a look at country. So we're going to say describe, or DSC for short, country. And we can see in here, okay, that country has an ID. I'm assuming this is where the country name is, and then the last date or the last time it was updated. And so we can kind of see what's there. The other way to see what's there is actually to select the data. Now, the describe command gives you a nice overview, but the select command can often just give you, because we see that there's a country field here, but we don't know what data is actually kind of in there. So what I like to do is I like to describe it to kind of get a general overview, but then I like to just do a select. And this is actually how we view the data in there. So we're going to select everything from country, meaning all the columns. We're going to show all the columns in the country table and all the data. So we can actually see all of our countries here. There's quite a bit of them. And and then you can kind of get an idea, like, okay, the country column, we made the assumption that that's where the country name goes. And we were right, because that's what's there. So let's take a look at one more table. And then we'll do the other thing, and we'll do it in the GUI too, so we can kind of get a similar idea. So let's show tables again. And let's take a look at what would be one that's somewhat not explicit. Like inventory.
Is there a way to show the data? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Is there a way to show the data like paginated, so you can see like one screen at a time instead of it all spooling like that?
No, so that's the one thing. When you're in command line, it will just spool out because it's just kicking all the info to the screen. Because when you're on command line, like, I move my mouse around and we can highlight text, but it is all text based. So no pagination, nothing like that. It's just going to spool it all out, which is one of those things. Sometimes that's nice and sometimes it's not, because we can actually save all of our command stuff to a log file, which is nice. But the downside is that it's one big long string essentially. So yeah, unfortunately, no way to do that. But that's why we have the GUI, and that's kind of what I'll get at here in a minute. Is there's specific times that I use one or the other. So let's take a look at something that's a little less clear. So for example, inventory. What is inventory? Do we know what inventory is? It's kind of hard to say. So we're going to take a look. So let's describe inventory. And we can take a look here and we see film ID, store ID, and last update. So, okay, so we kind of get somewhat of an idea just by looking at the columns in there. So the inventory is probably what film and what store there is, if a film's at a certain store. But let's take a look. Let's just look what's in there. I'm going to select everything from inventory. And this data doesn't mean much to us at the time because we are just seeing numbers. But if we were to connect this, these all reference a movie. And essentially what I think we're seeing that this film is at a certain store. And most of the time you have some comments to go with it to kind of help you. Other times you just kind of have to muddle your way through or talk to somebody who would know. But that's why I wanted to show those various commands there, because they're really handy. So the first one is show databases to get you started. The use command, because we're going to use sakila. And then we're going to show tables to see what tables are in there. And then from there, we can describe different tables to kind of see what columns are in that table. So now let's do the same thing here. And I'm going to use our student just so it's a little bit easier. So on here, what we would do is we could take a look at the table here. And, obviously we can see the columns and look at it kind of like we did there. So here's our city, or we did country. Let's take a look at country. We can see our country table and that kind of stuff. We can also see all the data in here. So these little buttons, this one is a shortcut to select all. So, and you can see it just puts it right here for you. Select everything from sakila.country, which is our database.table. If we did, so let's try this. Select everything from country. Let's execute it. Now I wanted to show you this error because this is why sometimes it's nice to have it direct go in there, because you'll notice that when I tried to run this, I got this error and it says no database selected. And we could select a default database. So I could set this as the default schema. And whenever you see the word schema and database are synonymous for the most part. So whenever you see schema, to me, it's synonymous with database. There's lots of technical stuff going on, but whenever we create a database, you're essentially creating a new schema. So we could, if we don't use that use command, we either have to set one by default in the GUI, or we can just issue that use command. So we're going to say use sakila. The other thing we can do, if we don't use that, you can actually specify the full path, which is database.table. So I can say select everything from sakila.country, and then the computer knows how to find it, because then it's saying, oh, I know what database I'm pulling it from and I know which table. If we use the use command, it's basically saying, look, right now I'm using sakila, so if I don't specify a table or a database, use sakila by default. So we can either do it that way or the other. Now on to the paper, because I've just shown you some real quick examples, and I'm sure that the reading will provide a little bit more insight as well. But my main thing is if I'm on a server doing work, I really like to do this because a lot of times you're not, depending on your task. If I'm trying to get data out, like if I'm doing more of an analytical type role, like where I'm writing a report, I will always use the IDE because it's really nice to see your data. A lot of times you're going to write the script to save it and so on and so forth. So if I'm in an analytical, like report creating kind of role, the IDE is going to be kind of my go-to tool because there are some really nice features that let you kind of do this kind of stuff. And there are a lot of jobs out there that are only report building or analytical type roles where you're just solely gathering data. You're not going to manipulate the database too much. You're just going to gather data out. And those are the type of people that I think the IDEs were really made for. If you're going to be doing a lot of development and stuff, the command line is really nice. Now, we don't have a great example of this right now, but a lot of times, in fact, most of my work is actually scripting Python to pull results out of a database. And so in that case, I'm doing a lot of command line stuff anyways. So I actually write my SQL and do all my work from the command line because I'm already there. And it's often quicker for me. You can kind of see that it's just more clicks through here and that kind of thing. And if you're already developing in Python, odds are you're already in a terminal. So those are kind of some differences. And from my perspective, the big difference now, like it kind of alludes in the instructions that you're more productive if you know terminal. I would say that you are going to be more productive to your company if you know command line in general, not just for MySQL, but in general. Because if you know command line, it's I guess knowing the command line comes with a higher skill set. So what I'm saying is don't be afraid or ashamed if you like the Workbench right now, because honestly, for beginners, I think the Workbench is absolutely phenomenal. I think it really reduces that barrier to entry for databases. But over time, don't be afraid to try out the terminal as well, because a lot of times you will be in a terminal, and in many cases, that might be the only way to access your database. So those are my 2 cents, and I'm excited to see what you guys write in your papers. And we kind of went over a little bit more than what's required for this week, but I kind of wanted to give you enough like insight to kind of help with your paper, because that's where I would start. Is I would just and we've kind of covered some stuff. Don't do the exact same thing, but you can explore with the reading, because in the book they have you do a couple different things. They talk about a couple different things, but along the way, take some screenshots and save those. I would start writing my document about the same time that I would start researching. Like, this is our research. What we just did is our research for our paper. Does that make sense, everybody? Kind of like how that would go. I know it's a little off the rails, like as far as it's not going to tell you step by step. The book probably will give you a little bit more of a direction, but as far as what we expect from the paper, it's completely up to you. As long as you, I guess, have evidence and support for your paper, which is where the screenshots come in. And a lot of times it's just opinion, but just explore the pros and cons, because screenshots are going to, especially for versus type stuff, like in this case, you might take a screenshot and say, I selected data from both and this is how it comes out. I described a table from both and this is how it came out, kind of a thing. In fact, let's describe country. So when we run describe here, we can kind of see it there. You can kind of see the difference in the format. Does that make sense to everybody? Kind of, does that help ease your nerves as far as how the paper's going to go, kind of a thing?
That makes it make a little more sense, I think.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? I guess if do you have any questions that would help make that anything you've come across easier, or is So let's see what time is it. I usually, yeah, because it's only been it's been an hour. I try to keep these close to an hour, but no more than an hour and a half. But is there anything you want me to go over that would just overall be generally helpful? I'm really going to see, I don't have the book on this computer. I usually don't. I'm not on Windows, so I like everything, like the book, my PDF version of the book is on my other side, my Linux hard drive. And I guess what I will end with, because we kind of went a lot here and we went kind of fast, and that's because I know the book's going to cover a lot of this. So you don't have to know all this right off the bat. Really, it's just about like, I think that the purpose of this assignment is just to kind of say like, get in there and try to play with some of these things. So in Workbench, hit schema, click on some of these buttons, see what's going on, that kind of thing. Try a few of those commands. We have this little cheat sheet here. Just kind of poke around a little bit, and then write a response for it. And next week we're really going to dive into, because this week is more about getting set up and all that. And if you're having issues with the install, message me on Teams if you're on there, or shoot me an email if you're not on Teams, and we will try to resolve those. Like I said, this is my first time doing the Windows one too, so I don't know off the top of my head. But if you shoot me like what you're getting and some screenshots, that'll be helpful. So like in this case, like it says that it needs another version of Visual Studio and Python. Maybe check those versions and see if you have the latest, because I downloaded the latest MySQL and then the latest Visual Studio, and it seemed to work good. But like I said, I had never installed those before, so maybe it's maybe there's some weird conflicting things. Maybe you have to uninstall some, reinstall some. So if you run into those, just shoot me a message and we can hopefully get those resolved. All right. Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you for being so accessible, because I've had teachers that weren't very accessible, and you've helped me so much already.
Oh, no problem. Yeah,
and really quick response too.
Yeah, that's why I like Teams. Because I know like every turn, I put out the announcement. I say, like, please get on Teams. And part of that is my experience is that most of the time, if I can't answer it within, a timely manner, someone else does. And you'll find that as it goes along, it really, it becomes more like a classroom, which what I really like, because I love online learning. I did my whole graduate program online. My wife actually did her undergrad online. So I really like online learning. But I also like the on-campus collaboration, because I think oftentimes that's like what is missed with online learning. And I feel like Teams really solves that, because it's at your leisure, because I know everybody's on different schedules, but we can have class discussion, and a lot of times you guys will end up helping each other. We've already seen that this early in the term. So if you're not on Teams, be on the Teams, because it helps everybody, and I can respond so much quicker than like Canvas messages, because I get the notifications, but sometimes if I'm in a meeting or something, I can't really jump on Canvas, but I always have Teams up because my work uses Teams. So if you shoot me a Teams message, like I can real quick pop a response on my phone. And sometimes it's even just like, hey, can't check right now, but give me just a few and I can check. But most of the time I can kind of give you direction to start poking around in, or an answer. So yeah, the Teams is great.
I did pull the link to the video from my last term in CIT111 on how to download this. I don't know if anyone else can access it or not.
I
but-
clicked it and it popped right up for me. So I'm assuming that you can get to it. Maybe you have to be logged in because I am logged into Canvas, but I'm guessing because I don't have access to this course. So I'm guessing that it should be accessible for everybody.
I was
So,
able to access it when I clicked on the link. So
Perfect.
so it
Perfect.
should hopefully walk you through some of those steps. And there's also one in there for Mac if somebody
Perfect.
I can share it too. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to share that, that would be awesome because I will take and copy those links and share them as well. Yep. And I'll be honest, I'll apologize. I thought that it was actually easier. Installing on Linux, which I guess is what I'm used to, is surprisingly way easier. And this is going to be a little embarrassing because how to install on Ubuntu is 2 steps, and this one's optional. So that's all it takes on Linux is one command. So I guess I kind of went into this a little blind because I'd never done it on Windows before, and I wanted to start fresh, so I didn't try in advance, or normally I would have went through it just to stop any issues. But I figured, that way I don't have any like pre-installed things that'll make it miss something, which I guess is good because if you're running the same issues I did, hopefully it helps. But a red arrow would yeah. The text larger, yes. Yeah, and normally I'm on another computer, and I would switch over, but it would end the meeting. I can definitely make my text bigger. On my other one, it's already actually preset to be larger. I actually don't know how to do it on here. Edit properties, maybe. Hey, there we go. Font. Let's make it a size 24. There we go. Sorry about that. I should have. I forget because, like I said, I'm never on Windows. And next week when I actually do the meeting next week, which by the way is on Tuesday, it will be big everywhere because it's already set.
I dumped in the one for Macintosh as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
So hopefully that'll help somebody.
I'm sure that will help people. And they won't have to watch this hour-long video either. So, but anyways, that should get you started. And again, don't fret too much. Like I'm actually a pretty lenient grader. Like to me, it's more just like about like the learning experience. So just have a good time doing it. Just like research, have some fun, write the paper. This is actually my first time grading papers. Believe it or not, all the previous terms I've been teaching this class for over 5 years now, and it's always just been labs, which is here's code, here's my code, and they'd actually submit their code to me, and stuff like that. So this is my first time grading papers. I'm definitely not an English major, so you don't have to worry about that. Like I'm more interested in the content. Obviously, I like, and I've always told people this in the past, I like to treat the class almost like a team in business. So, obviously you want to be professional, so make sure your sentences are capitalized and, make an effort on your grammar and spelling. But I'm obviously not going to be an English crazy doc points for, I'm not going to be looking for that stuff if I could even catch it. So, just treat it like a professional, like we're all professional. I don't, I have to say this, just treat it like you would if you were writing a memo for a business or whatever, and you'll be good. Formatting, I don't care how it's formatted. I don't care if it's an MLM or whatever. Basically just, write your paper and like you would an email, and that's about it. So you don't need to be too worried about that. To me, it's more about to me, it's like a documentation of your own learning. So I hope that is fun because I actually really enjoyed my master's program. in that sense, because I could approach it my own way, and that was the big key. Is I was always worried, like, oh, did I do what they expected? Did I hit everything they expected? And after a couple tries, I found that it wasn't. I worried for no reason, because the whole process was about, going through the research process on your own. So I hope that is enjoyable for you guys. Like I said, this is the first term we're trying it, so obviously feedback is always appreciated. So does anyone else have any questions?
If we do pull information from other websites, you would like us to do all the documentation and have a documentation at the bottom?
It's up to you. I definitely source it, obviously, because I think that legally you have to. But I'm okay with just like, putting either, direct quote, like if you've taken an English class, do a direct quote, like, where so-and-so says, or just in parentheses, put your source. Like I said, it doesn't have to be like officially sourced in MLA format. I can't remember the acronym. Kind of just like if you were going to source it on like an email or a web page, just, I guess, make an attempt to make it look professional, I guess.
Thank you.
If that makes sense. Yeah. Great question though. All right. And the other thing I've thought about is if you format it in a blog post as well, that would be fine too. Because I did have the thought, like, oh, I wonder if anyone's gonna like, I don't know if you guys like do blogs as like a way to take your notes. I know some people do that. If you choose to do it that way too, that's great as well. It doesn't have to necessarily be paper format. So, all right. Well, if there's no other questions, I don't want to keep you longer. Like I said, I try to keep these just the right amount. I know this was the first one, so we kind of took a little longer. Next week, hopefully, it will be more direct and better. And I'm also going to try and get a recording out before next week, just about some basics for the topic next week. So every week I kind of post like the resources with the weekly announcement. I try to, so it should be getting better as it goes. So, but anyways, does anyone else have any questions before we stop the recording? I will hang around for some questions after if you want to ask one off recording. But if anyone has a question related to week one, or course structure or anything like that, now would be the time to ask. Because it does help other students, because a lot of people just can't make it. We have students in like other time zones that are crazy, and it's just, they're not going to be on at 1 a.m. to watch. So they appreciate the comments. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording.